Hello and welcome to Boomer Live by Boomer 11, the best free to play fantasy sports app out there. So, if you haven't already downloaded the app, just get on the bio and click on the link and download the app. It's absolutely free to play this T20 World Cup. Have an exciting experience with Boomer 11 and also try out our predictor feature, which we have included. Today, we had one hell of a game. Australia was Ireland. You can say it was one sided for the majority of it, but then Ireland also fought back. Australia would have wanted to finish Ireland off quite comfortably because they wanted to up the net run rate, but Ireland really had a very good day. Lochran was having a very good day out with the bat. You saw towards the end, he was really looking for someone for support, but that did not happen. I have Jaren and Sandeepani with me. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, to the show because today we can talk about the host nation who are kind of struggling at the same time to make it in the semi-finals, but they'll be very happy with two back-to-back wins, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Australia today needed which went their way. Of course, against Sri Lanka as well. They came pretty close to bottling it. But today, I think they were a lot more comprehensive. You would say, although it was not the smoothest victory, but somehow I think especially their bowling really came through, and also their batting towards the end. These are the two reasons why Australia really took over the game and won and saw it through. But what we also saw today was the glaring differences in skill set between the two teams. Obviously, I think Ireland did. I mean, credit to Ireland, they fought. There were stages in the game where Ireland really competed against Australia, and Australia were unsettled. But then we all knew that this is the kind of result it's going to end up with. I mean, they're going to end up with. And if today they had lost 2 points, I think Australia would have been very upset. But one thing I really feel is today. I mean, today is that it was England's victory in a way that New Zealand. I mean, that Ireland fought to this extent because as it stood at the after the toss, Australia had to win this match with 75 runs or more to get a better net run rate than England, and they couldn't. They only, I think, they won the match by 42 runs, which is not enough for their net run rate, and that's the reason why I think England will be slightly relieved going into tomorrow's match.
True. We'll talk about tomorrow's match later, but then let's talk about today's match because for the Australian captain, finally he's hit some runs, so that's a huge respite for him. Throughout the tournament, a lot of questions on his form. Even he did come out saying that he was awful against Sri Lanka, where he was not able to hit even one ball out of the park. He was struggling to find the fence, and today he'll be very pleased with that because you want to score some runs under the belt, regardless of who the opposition is. Runs under the belt will really give you confidence, isn't it, Sandeepani?
Yeah, definitely. And it is not helping the fact for Australia that David Warner is not really being in the thick of the scoring, which you don't really expect from David Warner in a multi-nation tournament. I think he has been having an off sort of a period coming back from the injury. He doesn't look really settled. So I think all in all, a very important knock from Aaron Finch. Not just to cement his place as the captain and the opener for Australia, but also to give a to lead from the front. And I think this was very important for them because right now I think Jaren mentioned, yeah, that England are pretty comfortable when it comes to the net run rate. But when you think about it, that England will have to win 2 games on the trot and they'll have to beat New Zealand, who looks to be in far better shape than England is, because England went on to lose to Ireland. And whereas Australia, on the other hand, will have the easier of the opponents. I think they are left with probably Afghanistan, I guess,
Yeah, they are
if
left
I'm
with
not wrong.
Afghanistan. After New
I think,
Zealand, they are left with Afghanistan.
yeah,
No, no, England have to play Sri Lanka.
yeah.
England have to play Sri Lanka, and Australia have to play Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the 2 games that England will have to play will not at all be easy. They have one game against New Zealand. They have the other game against Sri Lanka. On the other hand, I think Australia will be taking on a much relatively weaker team on paper. I think it is Afghanistan that Australia will be taking on. If
Yeah,
not Afghanistan,
it's
I don't
Afghanistan.
know. I think it's
It is
Afghanistan because they,
Afghanistan.
yeah. So Australia will have to play Afghanistan, and Afghanistan haven't really won anything. They have only completed one complete game, which they lost, and the other 2 games were washed off. So we haven't actually seen Afghanistan how they would fare, and I don't think they are going to find it or pose any actual threat to the Aussies with the kind of batting form that they are in. They are definitely going to struggle in Australia. We saw glimpses of it in the game against England. the bowling is their strongest suit, but when it comes to batting, I think there is massive scope of improvement. So Australia will have a easier pairing, but whereas England will have to go on to defeat Sri Lanka and New Zealand. So it is not at all going to be easy. Only if that happens, then you can probably consider the net run rate. So I think Australia look to be in way more, like they have a greater probability than England of making it to the semifinals as of now, because New Zealand also has 2 games and they are already sitting at 5 points in 3 games. So it is going to be relatively comfortable for New Zealand. Australia are on 5 points with 4 games, but England are on 3 points with 3 games. So it makes the 2 remaining games a do or die game for them. And even if they win both their games and Australia manages to go on and defeat Afghanistan by a huge margin, I think it might still be possible that Australia makes it through. So yeah, right now I think New Zealand and Australia looks to be the 2 teams that are going to make it through. But again, before the tournament, pre tournament favorites, I think with the core strength of the team on paper, I think England uh, were the strongest team, most balanced team on paper. They haven't actually found. I think they were a bit unlucky in the game against Ireland. I mean, Ireland played brilliantly, but then again, I think it was England. If the game would have been completed, or even if England would have got 1 over more, I think the result would have been different. But nonetheless, it was not to be for them. So
We got Rob Key, who says that England are bringing it home, and he also says that he's going to give Butler knighthood as he's already spoken to his buddy Charles. I bet he has spoken to his buddy Charles. But jokes apart, let's talk about today's game also, because one thing which came back today was the old Mitchell Stark. He was steaming in, he was swinging the ball, which is a pleasant sight in ICC tournaments. And Mitchell Stark, it was the old Mitchell Stark once again, because one thing which we missed of Mitchell Stark was that he was not able to bring the ball into the right handers. Mitchell Stark is always lethal when he's able to bring the ball into the right handers. The Mitchell Stark of 2015, Mitchell Stark of 2019 also could bring the ball in, but after that he lost the swing. He had to compromise on the swing because of his action. He had to change his landing a little bit. He had to change his wrist position. But now today, I don't know if it was a condition. It is a new ball. As we already know, this is the new set of Kookaburra balls which are used for this World Cup, and they have a lot more lacquer in it, which enables the ball to swing for a longer period of time. And also the pitches are conducive towards the latter end, because Ireland was batting under the lights. Jaren, you reckon there's a positive sign for Australia just before knockouts, if they qualify for knockouts? And Mitchell Stark's form was something which they were worried about, and today his bowling will give them a lot of confidence, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you've got it spot on. Because Aaron Finch had stopped giving Mitchell Stark the new ball. It was the preferred pair was had started to become Josh Hazelwood and Pat Cummins rather than Mitch Stark. And this is something that you've seen in the recent past, because the new ball, he had stopped making the ball, and at his pace. I mean, if you don't make the new ball talk, then batsmen will really capitalize on the power play, because that, I mean, as you know, as they say, the newer the ball is, the harder it is, and much more easier it is to get to the boundary rope, because if the batsman doesn't have to put as much pressure, and that's the reason why you see even the smallest of deft touches sometimes go to the fence. If you're not able to make the ball talk initially, the batsmen are going to find it much easier. And that is what was happening
yeah.
until Pat Cummins was switched in to bring in, to be the bowling pair with Josh Hazelwood. But today, what we really saw was, it's obviously the factor has to be the fact that the new batch of Kookaburra balls, it has a lot more lacquer on it, and the seam does not get diminished for a long time. It stays much more in the game, and which is why you see the power play in this World Cup has been that has been a bit more difficult to bat in, because it's not been easy today. Although I was a bit surprised at the way Ireland started in their power play. I know they lost quite a bit of wickets. They lost half the side in the power play. But what was incredible is that they scored 49 runs, which is pretty impressive, because compared to how teams have done well, I mean, teams have done in this World Cup in the power play. I think it was a very good start in terms of the runs scored. But obviously, I think when you bat like that, you live by the sword and die by the sword. And right after that, Mitchell Stark coming in and really bowling those 2 deliveries where the and it was the youngsters as well. You
Yeah.
don't expect someone like a Lock and Tucker to be able to combat that kind of a delivery, because it's not easy. I think any batsman would have struggled. Not Lock and Tucker, rather Harry Tector. Sorry, no, I mean sorry, Curtis Camphor and George Dockrell rather. two batsmen who are not the best of technical batters. So
Yeah,
you can expect that to happen. Although you would think that he'll be tested a lot more when it comes to the power play. When players like I wouldn't say Kohli as such because he's had that issue with the ball coming in from the left hander, but someone like a Suryakumar Yadav or Hardik Pandya would still, or even Kohli and Rohit Sharma would on their day you expect them to counter that. And also you've got New Zealand batters or English batters, not English, but rather New Zealand and South African batters who might also come into picture. But
absolutely.
having said that, it's a good sign, definitely. But Stark, I think you'll probably be keeping a close eye on Stark and how he does well against some of the bigger teams.
Absolutely. Sandeep, bhai, we've got Satvik asking us, England are the most, I said to be the most balanced team, but their bowling is not the most dependable because if you look at their bowling, there are grey areas out there, especially when it comes to Chris Woakes. There's not the best of death bowlers out there. Sam Curran has done well, but still not the most dependable. Mark Wood is a definite positive because he can run in and ball quick at you, and especially in wickets like Brisbane, Perth, that's where he's going to come in handy. And people do rate them the most dependable bowling attack, most balanced team. Is it because of the all rounders they've got, or is it just based on specific skill?
See, I think it's definitely got to do with the all-rounders because we all know that all-rounders play a huge role in T20 cricket. If you have someone who can give you 4 overs with the ball and can contribute, sort of play some sort of 30 run or 15 ball, a cameo sort of a knock, that actually helps the side. Having said that, I think they have always, like England have always struggled with their economy rates at the death. You have bowlers like Chris Jordan. That is where I don't understand their selection. I mean, Adil Rashid has not been in any form whatsoever. And if you have all rounders like Liam Livingston and Moeen Ali in your team, I absolutely don't see any justification why Adil Rashid is playing ahead of Chris Jordan. And
Absolutely.
also, not just that, I think the balance to their bowling side. I think Rhys Topley was starting in their playing 11 leading up to the World Cup, and just before their first game, I mean, he got injured and he got out of the World Cup. So that was a
You
huge
know,
blow to them. I think
because
Mark Wood coming back
you
from an
asked a
injury is a
question
very good.
on the bowling front, because this tournament, as I was already talking about Stark, I also felt that this particular tournament has helped bowlers who are attacking up front, likes of Chris Woakes, likes of Sam Curran, maybe if he's used up top, and Mark Wood. So it's not a tournament where you have to rely a lot on death bowling because it's not a batting heavy tournament. If you look at it, bowlers have come into the tournament a lot more,
Yeah,
and bowlers who
definitely.
are looking to attack.
One thing with one thing we are assured with England that you have a player who can come in at number 11 and he can definitely chase down 20 runs of the last 2 overs. If you think about it, Sam Curran, Chris Jordan, Chris Woakes, then Mark Wood is a handy batter as well. And even in times where England were really dominant, and they used to pick up wickets in the middle order, in the middle
Yeah,
overs. You had somebody like a Liam Plunkett coming in, chipping in with wickets whenever he was asked to. And then you have spinning all rounders in the form of Adil Rashid is a handy batter as well. If you consider, like, talk about his batting skills. So I think Satvik is actually very right in pointing out that England relies heavily on their batting, but I think they have the bowling that is needed at times to restrict the opposition to 120, 150. They have the pace, they have the guile of somebody like a Ben Stokes or a Chris Woakes. I mean, Chris Woakes did not have the best of sort of comebacks. I mean, he had a brilliant series against Australia. He bowled really well in that lead up series to the World Cup against Australia. But come the World Cup, I think he has been a bit expensive. But I think Sam Curran has stepped up and he has bowled magnificently in the 2 games that they played. And also, I think there has been great contribution from Mark Wood as well. I think Mark Wood right now is one of the most fierce bowlers in cricket. If you think about fast bowling, you think about Harris Roth coming in, steaming in at 150 kilometers. There was Mohammad Wasim for Pakistan. You have Mark Wood in similar ranks as well. He can come in, steam in with over 150 kilometer per hour deliveries consistently. Yeah, definitely, it's not a replacement or a like to like replacement for somebody of Jofra Archer's caliber because he has already proved himself in various T20 leagues all over the world. But I think until the time Jofra Archer is able to make a comeback to this side, I think Mark Wood and the bowling lineup that they have in general with the batting firepower that they have, I think they are one of the most balanced sides because all you need are all-rounders who can give you both like who can impact the game with both bat and ball. and that is where like England have 8 or 9 bowling options. They have 11 batting options. So what more do you need when you think about a team?
Yeah, I think that's what makes a team more balanced in T20 format. Especially in Test format, you can really focus a lot on specific skills. But when it comes to a team balance in T20 formats, you need utility players, a bowler who can bat a little bit, a batter who can ball a little bit, and that makes a team well rounded. So when it comes to India as well, yesterday you did question why did India just go with five bowlers and why didn't they use Deepak Hooda? Because these are specific skills what you need in T20 format. That's why T20 is a different ball game altogether when you compare to other formats. Saloni says happy
But
Halloween.
then,
Was
but then
hoping to
when
see you all
when
in.
we are comparing somebody like a Deepak Huda, and we are asking him to be a specialist batter coming in at number 5, number 6, number 7 for Team India, I definitely personally feel that that is not his role in the Indian side. He can be a very good replacement of somebody like Surya Kumar Yadav or a Virat Kohli coming in at number 3 or number 4
Yeah.
when the team needs some
No,
balls to
I
get going.
totally agree
Deepak
with you
Huda
on
is
this
not
because
a
there is no point of playing Deepak Hooda if you're playing him at number 6 or number 5 because he's not done well there. We've seen that even in the IPLs. IPL, he bats number 3 or maximum if you can put him at number 4. You're going to put him at number 5, number 6, or even number 7. That's just, destroying him. There's no point. There's no utility of him. And I don't think he's the best suited player even for Australian conditions. Absolutely. Saloni says, happy Halloween and was hoping to see you all in Halloween costumes. I know. I think maybe one day we can do that costume party where Sandeepan, you can wear a pumpkin, and also Jaren, you can also wear something really funky,
I
right?
am wearing a pumpkin. This is
I
a
think Abel
sort
is
of
the
a
one who's
deflated
dressed as a
pumpkin.
canopy today. Abel is come dressed as a canopy.
Yes, I'm looking like this wild tree out there, which is more scary. And can Australia really qualify? I think that's a good question. Your thoughts, Jaren? Because at this point, the points table look very good. Australia is right up there because they're number 2 on the table alongside New Zealand at number 1. But England, if they win tomorrow, it gives a different edge onto the table, which means England will go number 2. New Zealand will still be leading the table because they've got 2 wins. At the same time, the net run rate is very high. Your thoughts? Can Australia really manage it?
I mean, I think now it's pretty much out of Australia's hand, to be very honest, because both Australia has only 2 points more that they can gain in their final match against Afghanistan. That is, I mean, at Adelaide. On the other
But
hand,
I think
England have two
if
more
they can
matches to
notch
go.
up a top performance, I mean, if they can go hard with the bat and
Yeah,
try
I
to score
think
somewhere in close
the
of
kind of conditions that
230,
we saw
240, yeah.
today, something like that will be placed on Australia as well, where they would require a certain amount of runs to triumph against England. But what to be very honest, I think the best way Australia would certainly hope, is tomorrow New Zealand continues their dominance and gets ahead, or even maybe even the rain comes into picture. Because if either of that happens, then England is only going to get 1 point out of the match, or otherwise England lose both their points. And if that is the case, then England end up at 7 points. If I'm not wrong, 7. Yeah,
Yeah, 7 points.
uh,
Tomorrow they end
England
up
will
at
end up
5.
at
No,
England
Tomorrow
will
England
they
will
end up
end
end
at
up
a
at
tally
6.
of
I think if they
five,
if
5 or 6 points. Yeah, if it rains, it might become 5 points after the whole complete matches are played. And if they lose, then they'll end up at 5 points, given that they win their last match against Sri Lanka. On the other hand, Australia are already sitting at 5 points right now, so they'll obviously be hoping that they beat Afghanistan. And tomorrow, basically, if tomorrow's performance, if England is
If England loses
winning,
tomorrow, that's possibly end of their World Cup campaign. To be honest.
it is definitely the end of the World Cup, because then what England will hope
yeah,
is
yeah, it's safe to
Australia.
say if England loses tomorrow, they are out.
I mean,
Yes.
suffice to say, unless then it is definitely out of England's hand, because then Australia, England would want rain to come in the final match in Adelaide, or they would be hoping that Afghanistan pulls off a defeat. But otherwise, England does not have a chance, and that's why
No,
tomorrow's
I
match
think
is so vital in this
even if
match.
England loses tomorrow and rain comes in the game against Australia in the game between Australia and Afghanistan, Australia
Yeah,
will
yeah.
still have 6 points, and the most England can manage if they lose tomorrow is 5.
Yeah, 5.
Correct.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Correct. Absolutely. So yeah, I think tomorrow it's vital for England to win. That's where, and if that doesn't happen, then Australia is in the driver's seat then.
Either way, I think Australia will be better placed because England's net run rate is not something humongous at this point. It's still in positives, but not
But
plus
then
one unless
Australia
they have a
has
big.
negative 0.3 and England have positive 0.2. So I think there's a
It is still
difference of
positive
zero point
0.
0.5.
I think they if they get if they get a massive win, maybe to chase down in 10 or 11 overs, which I think is possible if they get Afghanistan team rolled out, and which I think is a possibility. You know,
But I
Australian
think that's
conditions.
where that's why they'll be really upset with today's game. They had England on, I mean Ireland on the ropes today. I think they were 106 for 8 in the 14th over. From there
They
on,
were
Ireland
26
just
for 5 at the end of 4 overs. So I think
yeah, and then
whatever
from there
Ireland
on,
did is a
26 for
commendable
5
thing.
actually. That's where you felt like they should have really pressed the pedal and done the job. But I
Yeah.
think, and also
I'll
I
give you
feel
the
somewhere Australia
point
will be a
table
bit upset.
on the screen now so that people can see it and also understand what's really happening. See, in
Yeah.
Group 1 at this point, you see New Zealand is having an NRR of 3.850. That is a massive NRR. If they lose tomorrow, it kind of hampers their NRR, but at the same time, they're sitting pretty confident. They're pretty up top. You know, they'll be having one more game. That game is going to be against Ireland. If I'm not wrong, New Zealand are going to play Ireland in the
Ireland,
last
yeah.
game. New Zealand are going to play Ireland, and I believe, unless Ireland pulls off a big surprise, I don't see anything really happening. New Zealand should be able to manage to win that game. So New Zealand are very comfortable at this point. I don't see them really dropping to number 3, just considering their NRR. But when it
See,
comes to
honestly, I don't see New Zealand dropping to number 2 as well. I think New Zealand are going to top this group because one game they are going to face against Ireland, and it is expected that they'll,
there are
with the players
chances
that
New
they are
Zealand can still drop to number 2. You know why I say that? If England wins tomorrow, they'll go to 5. Yeah, correct. I think if England wins, they'll go to 5. But then, yeah, correct. They'll be clashed on 7 points, and that's what's going to
yeah, and
happen
with
if
the net
England
run
wins
rate
the
that
cup.
New Zealand have, I think it is very almost impossible to sort of
Yeah,
for
I think
England
the
to
two mega
overtake them
wins,
after three
one
games.
of 89 odd runs against Australia and 50 odd runs against Sri Lanka, has really put them in a good stead for the semi final,
Yeah.
which I think it's just a
Also, I
matter of
mean,
time we score a few already.
you would expect the way Ireland struggled today against swing bowling and the kind of pace attack that Australia had. I think they would struggle a lot more against the likes of Bolt and Tim Southey in the power play.
True. I mean, I totally agree with you on this
And with
because
the
I can't.
form that Bolt has been in,
Yeah, so it's
Yes,
going to be
he's been in
much
good
more
form.
difficult.
Southey's in good form.
And you would also expect this Australian batting lineup, for instance, is not fired at their best. You still haven't seen the likes of David Warner or the likes of I mean Mitch Marsh, Glenn Maxwell come to the party. On the other hand, New Zealand almost everyone has stepped up at least once in this tournament, which means their batting
and
is even more comprehensive at this
that's
point in
been
time. And
the motto for New Zealand in ICC tournaments. They have all these players step up in one of the games, and you have a complete team effort, team performance. All the players contribute because if you think about New Zealand, you don't really think of any of the batters being the leading run scorer after the ICC tournament. Neither do you think of any of their bowlers to be the leading wicket taker in the ICC
yeah,
tournament. But they have 2 or 3 players in the top 5 or top 10. So that is where New Zealand is brilliant in ICC tournaments. All the players contribute at the right time, and whenever they need some miracle or they need a special performance, they get it from one of the players.
I totally agree with you because of the fact that they play as a team. But you know, one thing is also that New Zealand in this tournament have been very different. They've come up with an approach where they want to take the game on. I know they've had this approach, but then Finn Allen has really helped them. In the last 1 year, they did not have this because they were trying to find Martin Guptill's form, which was not possible. Devon Conway is always a stable role out there. Even you know what you get from Kane Williamson. Glenn Phillips does it in bits and pieces, but you wanted an aggressor up top like you had it with Brendan McCullum, and that's been the classic New Zealand case. Whenever New Zealand has done well, you need an aggressor up top, and Finn Allen has stepped up, though it just
Yeah,
did well in one game.
I think New Zealand deserves a lot of credit just because of the fact that they have dropped 2 of their more senior players who were very sort of relevant in T20 international cricket. Martin Guptill is the third highest run scorer in T20 internationals, and you also had somebody in the likes of Colin Munro who had scored 3 T20I 100s, and he was a consistent. At least he used to get New Zealand off to some sort of a start. But as time went by, he lost his form, and then you had Colin Munro taking a lot more time than he used to initially to get going. And I think it was a very sort of a sharp call to drop 2 of your more experienced
Yeah.
openers and go with Finn Allen and Devon Conway. And I think New Zealand deserves all the credit. The management deserves all the credit for taking these harsh calls, and I think that is what is paying off for them right now.
True. I mean, when it comes to their batting, that was one area where they were a little worried about because in Australian conditions, their batting hasn't really stepped up. If you look, they've had issues for the longest period of time. They've not did not have victory before this game against Australia for 11 years in Australia. So you know how bad their batting was, how bad their record was in Australia. They really had to rewrite the record, and that's where I thought this World Cup they really stepped up. And you have to give credit to Kane Williamson, everyone in the team management as well, because they came up with a plan and they executed with that with brilliance. We have an interesting comment which says New Zealand will choke out of Sydney. Your thoughts, Jaren, on that? Because they're going to be playing their game in Brisbane tomorrow. It's not their
Mm.
most suited place to play, but their bowling might come up. Their batting is something which might be questioned. But the likes of Mark Wood is going to charge in, and we've not really seen New Zealand outside Sydney as well.
Yeah, I mean, they had one match in Melbourne against
And also, to
Afghanistan.
add one point to this, Sydney is one of
Yeah.
the most easiest batting surfaces in Australia compared to all the other surfaces because it has the least pace, least bounce. But when you compare it with the Brisbane, a Perth, or even a Melbourne, for example, it's much more quicker. So New Zealand haven't really been tested in the proper Australian conditions.
Yeah, I mean, I think tomorrow. I mean, when they play tomorrow in Gabba, it's going to be a lot more difficult because the bounce is going to be a lot more steeper than Sydney. Sydney, I think, is still comparatively it doesn't bounce. It doesn't come on the bat as quickly as some of the other Australian grounds. Mind you, I'm not saying that Sydney is as slow as what you see in grounds like Pakistan, for instance. But Sydney is not as quick, as Gabba or Perth, for instance. But tomorrow, in that's one case that they'll be tested. But I would still say, you expect New Zealand to do a little better than. I mean, I'm sure they won't perform as well as or as easily as they have in the other tournaments because I think tomorrow they will have a lot more challenge to face. But having said that, Gabba is still a true wicket. The bounce is still consistent, and
Yeah.
what I've seen with New Zealand excellently in the last match, against Sri Lanka, where they got off to a very bad start, and then the way they came back, you saw that this New Zealand team wanted to play the whole 20 overs, and that's something that I feel is
But
any
uh,
team which is looking to
I'll
do
also
that is doing
say
well.
against Sri Lanka, there were a lot of misfields. That could have well
Yeah,
been a
yeah.
120 kind of a chase. They were 15 for 3. They were exposed in multiple fronts. But at the same time, if the host nation doesn't qualify into that, as we're talking, Sydney feels like a safe ground for New Zealand at this point. They're much more comfortable playing in Sydney because they're able to bring the spinners into action a lot more, able to
Yeah.
choke pressure into the opposition. Like Sandner Sodi combinations have worked out brilliantly for New Zealand up there. So if the host nation doesn't qualify into the semi-final, which means if Australia doesn't qualify into the semi-final, Australia won't get to play in Sydney, which means New Zealand can still play a semi-final one in Sydney. But if the host nation qualifies into the semi-final number one will be held in Sydney, where the host nation will play. So that can be something which New Zealand will be happy about. If our host nation doesn't qualify, they'll be much happier playing an India or a South Africa in Sydney.
Yeah, I mean, with the way they played against Australia in the first match, I think they'll still take Australia over England because England, I feel, is going to be the bigger threat for New Zealand. I felt that match, this whole World Cup, there's sort of if you guys really look up, host nations have never done well in T20 World Cup, because they have pretty much not been able to do. I mean, they've not done as well as you would expect. I think the best that a host nation has done is come to the final, semi-finals rather. I don't think a host nation's ever
Yeah,
won the
India
World
has
Cup.
come to the
I
semi-finals
think
last.
India has done it. I think India is the only team.
Yeah, India is the
Uh,
only team.
off the top of
Maybe
my mind,
I mean India was a host nation again last year, but you can say technically Pakistan plays a lot more in UAE, so they came to semi-final. But in
yeah. So I
2012,
think
Sri Lanka
overall,
played in the final.
host nations have
Sri
struggled
Lanka
because
played in the
and
final. Sri Lanka played in the
ICC.
final.
Yeah,
2012.
correct. I think ICC tournaments, right? If you look at it overall, host nations do struggle. I think there have been only three host nations who have won World Cups in their home, and that is in the 50 over tournament. So
And
overall,
that's with all
ICC
recent World
tournaments,
Cups:
host
2011
nation,
India, 2015 Australia, 2019 England. So
yeah,
all
yeah.
three have
2023
come
India,
the latest
2023
ones.
India, 2023
Hopefully,
India,
fingers crossed.
Remains to be
2027.
seen. Remains to be seen because I think right now in Indian conditions, I mean Asian conditions, India is the strongest 50 overs team. Every other nation has struggled in the subcontinent. I mean, in from the subcontinent team, every other nation has struggled in the 50 overs tournament. But having said that, you never know because these conditions are not as alien as they used to be. I mean, David Warner will say that Hyderabad is my home, or someone like someone like Conway might say that Chennai is my home. So these kind of things have.
I don't think Conway has
It's
ever
a
played
bit
in
too
Chennai.
early for Conway to say that, but you get my point, right?
Conway has never
Uh,
played in Chennai, so it's way too early to judge it. You can say Hyderabad is my home for David Warner.
yeah,
Debut
but like
Villiers
you
played
get the
in
point that
Bangalore
I'm
as
trying to
well.
raise. So
Yeah, I
that's a
understand
different
that.
discussion altogether. But point being, host nations have struggled, and I won't be surprised if Australia don't end up. But as of now, because of the kind of
I think
matches
if
England
England
are going to
wins
play,
tomorrow, I think if England wins tomorrow, that makes the job for Australia harder because,
it's going to be
yeah,
also
they are the
important
favorites
how
heading into
England
the game
win
against
tomorrow.
Afghanistan.
It's going to be very important to see how England win tomorrow. If New Zealand
No,
really
see,
drive England
it won't
close,
be that important because the gap between Australia and England right now, I think, is of point 0.5. So it's basically around 30 runs, 30, 31 runs gap right now. Australia has only one game to bridge that gap. But if England
yeah.
manages to win both their games, they are also going to up their net run rate as well. So I think it is going to be very difficult. If England manages to win both their games, it is going to be very difficult for Australia to catch up against England. So basically, Australia will have to come out all guns blazing and win by 90 or 100 runs, expecting that England does not pull off two incredible wins against New Zealand and Sri
Absolutely.
Lanka.
Absolutely. That's something which, England will have it in their mind, and England will be playing their best cricket tomorrow. Expect
Yeah.
England to come all guns blazing, and tomorrow they'll be, when England is put under pressure, there's only one way to play out of it. That's to play counter-attacking cricket, and all eyes will be on Josh Butler against Trent Bolt. That's going to be one matchup which everyone in their hand their eyes on, and you know how Josh Butler can be. If he gets going on those good bouncy Gabba wickets, which I think will suit him a lot more. Today you saw the ball did quite a lot, but if you're able to play a little bit on your back foot, give a little bit of time and play with true bounce, you can get runs. And I think Josh Butler has got the game to succeed tomorrow. If he gets going for England, they won't ask for anything more. And also they'll be hoping that Ben Stokes comes into party with the bat, because David Malan and Ben Stokes hasn't really showed up to the World Cup because the
I mean,
reputation they
very
carry.
honestly, I think almost every batsman has struggled this year's World Cup. If you look at the batting, England's batting hasn't been at all
See,
up to the
that's
mark.
where this
I mean, they have
entire
played just the
approach
two
had to
games,
be
and
challenged. You need
yeah.
technique to survive in these conditions. This World Cup has been about
Yeah,
technique,
yeah.
But
not
also
about.
let me bring up a very interesting fact. Talking about Butler versus Bolt, Bolt has never dismissed Butler in T20s in any form, neither in the IPL nor in T20 internationals. And Butler has scored 56 runs in 37 balls across all T20s against Bolt.
I think, yeah, exactly my point. So that's where he'll be looking to target as well. So tomorrow's entire challenge of whether Bolt can get Butler, or when Bolt puts pressure, Southey will get the better of Butler as well. Southey has been in fine form by getting wickets up front, and he'll be looking to get another scalp. And Alex Ailes, he has also not looked at his best, though he has scored runs in patches in Pakistan. He's scored a little bit of runs in Australia in that series, but it's not really come good. And in this World Cup, it's been totally different pitches. Even in that series in Australia, England versus Australia, I thought the pitches are going to remain like that. We're going to have 200 matches, but I don't know what has really happened in the World Cup. They put all fresh wickets, new sets of balls. Conditions have gotten a lot more cooler. It's very cold out there in Australia. Yesterday, India was South Africa. The matches were playing 8 degrees Celsius. Can you believe it? 8 degrees Celsius is damn cold, guys. You need to have the hands on your pocket. No wonder you saw a lot of misfields,
I think
because your hands are
the
going to be
playing
numb.
sports, a sport like football, for instance, you're continuously running and and that keeps your body warm. But when you're playing cricket, it becomes very difficult because you're fielding it long off, long on, or and where the action is so rare. But when the ball comes in your way, that's where the team really depends on you. And I think that is probably the reason why you have seen quite a lot of misfields this World Cup, because it's not been easy, because when you're taking those catches, your hands have to be warm, because the moment they get cold, it becomes a lot more numb. And maybe that's an explanation, because teams haven't really done well in the field, and these longer boundaries as well, you've got too much time on your hands,
And also,
so you
it
tend
is
to make
going
a
to
lot of
hurt a lot.
mistakes.
It is going to sting a lot
Yeah, and
once you
also,
drop a catch.
the kind of breeze that blows around the ground, right? You never know which patch of breeze it catches and how the ball is going to start behaving once it goes that high in the air. In tomorrow's match, English batsmen love hitting the ball high in the air, regardless of if it goes inside the boundary ropes or stays in the boundary ropes and they get caught. But
I think New
what?
Zealand have been the better of the fielding
And
side
also,
so
New
far in the
Zealand
tournament.
fielders are
Yeah,
outstanding. I mean,
Yeah, I expect them to, grab those. It'll be very surprising if they go on to fumble. I expect a
correct.
super over at least to start, the first super of the over of this World Cup.
But I
West
think if
between
there's a
England and
super
New
over,
Zealand.
if there is a super over, it is going to be. I feel that's where maybe New Zealand will feel little bit more comfortable. Because I mean, both the teams don't have the death bowling attack, I would say. But in terms of death bowling, I would say that I think New Zealand has a little bit more variety in
I don't think
comparison
New
to
Zealand have
Australia.
ever done well in super overs, regardless of who they are going to ball.
Actually, they haven't.
England
They
has
have
a
No, but
the
really
I
Indian
also think
record.
that New Zealand also does not
They've
have a
played.
proper death
I
bowler.
think they've
I think
had
Lockie Ferguson.
two super overs in the World Cups, and I think both of them were against Sri Lanka, and they lost both.
Yeah,
If I'm not
And
and
wrong.
not just that.
both the super overs came in very close intervals as well. I mean, New Zealand
That
lost two
2019,
super overs in
yes.
World Cup. I think it was back in
And
2012.
there was a
Or
bilateral where England traveled to New Zealand. There was a super over in a T20 game. And right after that, 2 months later, India traveled to New Zealand. And you saw two super overs happening in the same series. And it's
back
never
to
going
back.
well. Back to back games. And Team Southie ball, and it had to go all the way. So I'm expecting a Ben Stokes super over tomorrow. Let's see what happens. I'm expecting at least a man could run out of the non-striker end.
I think New Zealand will
Tomorrow
do
at
that.
Lena.
I really don't expect New Zealand to do it, and England I think will never do it now. For the next 50 years, you don't see England doing what do you say? No,
Come on, man.
run out of the non-striker end. That's what it's called, label by the way.
Yeah, that's what
Not
I
man.
corrected myself. I'm sorry. I think we should really correct ourselves. It's not it's
Because I
it's
think
very derogatory. Let's remember that. And
I think if England does do a non-striker run out, Joss Butler will be the first one to say, please. Joss Butler will be the first one to call the batter back.
but
He's
they're the
had
nice
too
guys
many
of
of them.
they're the spirit of the game merchants at this point, and they really will uphold the spirit of the game with some
Yeah.
spirit in their body as well. So I believe that's the way to go ahead.
But yeah, I
But
think on a different note, this year's World Cup, England, I think England's highest run getter has not even crossed 100 runs mark yet in the two matches that they have played.
you know the
They
top
struggled.
five run getters out of that, only two are from the top playing nation. And one is Suryakumar Yadav and one is Virat Kohli. In that,
I think
rest everybody has
that is
played a
still
qualifier.
expected. I would say because these the teams who played the group stage
No,
had three
but
more
you
matches in
will
excess.
also have to consider. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that when they are considering the leading run scorers or the leading wicket takers, they also take into account the group stage matches as well, not just the Super 12s.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
which I think
But
is very useless.
also if you just consider the Super 12s, I think the group one, that is the England group, the group at England, New Zealand, Australia plays. I think a lot more games have been rain affected than in group two. I mean, in group two you just had one washout. That too, some matches were like some play was affected. Whereas on the other hand, in group one, Australia versus England, there was no. It was a washout without a ball being balled. You had games of Afghanistan being washed out without a ball being balled. So it's been like that for group one. But when it comes to group two, you just had that Zimbabwe versus South Africa encounter where you still had a 7 over game, and I mean 7+3. So you had 10 overs of action, but no, not actually any game. So yeah, I mean those are not really right estimates to sort of understand
Yeah, but I
how
mean,
a player
if you
has
look at
been in.
the English batters' records, the highest run getter is David Malan, 53 runs in two matches. That's not good, and his strike rate is below 100 at 79. There are only three English batters who have strike rate about 100. That's Moeen Ali, Livingston, and Alex Hales. Alex Hales' strike rate is 104. Livingston and Moeen Ali are the only ones who have about 130 strike rate. So
They
England have
clearly
really
are the
struggled. And if you
Indian
look at their
merchants of this
totals,
tournament.
I mean, if you look at the totals that England have made against Afghanistan, they scored 113 in 19 overs. I mean, 18.1 overs. And against England, I mean against Ireland, sorry, they scored
Ireland
105 in 14.3
153.
overs. So it's really not giving a lot. It's not a lot of
Yeah.
confidence that's coming out of their batting. Also,
Yeah,
that match was played. I mean, the 113 match was played at Perth, and the other one was played in Melbourne, two of the most toughest pitches to bat in. But you would still expect England batters to have at least scored 80 to 70 runs, especially their top order. So I think that's where New Zealand have the advantage. I agree with I think I agree with Azul when he said that Sydney's probably been. I mean, when we all discussed that Sydney is the easier place to bat on compared to Melbourne and Perth, but
no,
you
it
still
is.
expect some sort of resistance from England, which has not been the case. And England doesn't
Has
enjoy the
England played
Australian
Sydney
conditions
yet?
as much
England haven't played.
because I
England
think
played one game on Perth, and England played their other game
one in Melbourne, yeah, Perth and
on
Melbourne.
Yeah, Perth and Melbourne both haven't been the most
And
easiest wickets to
both
bat on.
haven't been, but I think that's
But
where
also,
and
having
Gabba
said
is
that, I think tomorrow, if England will if England has to win, I think their batting has to do the job for
yeah,
them, because the New
exactly.
Zealand bowling is the main threat. I mean, New Zealand batting can be inconsistent at times because they will be looking to go hard at it. Because honestly, New Zealand have nothing to lose. They know that they are assured of a spot, almost assured of a spot in the semi-finals, unless something drastically goes wrong for them. So they'll come out, they'll play the aggressive brand of cricket that they have been playing. So it will the onus will be on England batters to come out and do something different, or try to disrupt the momentum of the New Zealand bowlers, because I think the New Zealand bowlers have been spectacular, be it Bolt or Tim Southee or Loki Ferguson or Mitchell Santner or Ish Sodhi. I think all the five players have been spectacular for them.
Yeah, and I
Absolutely.
mean, correct. I think that's where England will really, and England's strength is their batting. But in this World Cup, England's batting has really not come through, and I think there's a reason for it. As Abel mentioned,
And as we're
technique is
talking
the
about
one
them,
issue that English
let's
batters have
also
struggled with.
identify that
Yeah,
it's not been the easiest of World Cups. Let it be for
it
any batter. I know
hasn't. It
we've
hasn't.
gone really mad for KL Rahul questioning the way he is batted. It's not been an easy World Cup for any batter, even if it's
I think
happened
top
UAE.
order in general have struggled this year's World Cup. I think
Yeah,
a I mean the middle order has been the ones that have come through. New Zealand probably the only team where top order has come good on a regular basis. Aaron Finch probably is another
and
player
again,
who's
it's
top
about
order
it's
has
played
come
in
good.
Sydney. It's again
Yeah,
played
exactly.
easier.
Exactly. So they were playing in the easier pitches, on easier pitches. Aaron Finch, who's scored a lot of runs, hasn't scored at a very good strike rate. He scored a strike rate of 110. So top order in general has struggled this year's World Cup, and that's why you see the scores of 160, 170 being the difficult targets chased. Because
Absolutely.
once you lose your middle or top order, you really can't push onto a 180, 190.
Absolutely. Let's bring the fantasy team for tomorrow's contest up on the screen to understand, what can possibly be your fantasy team as well, because you can play your contest on Boomer 11 and win a lot of prizes. Remember, that's absolutely free of cost to play. So let's bring the teams. So we've gone with Devon Conway, Glenn Phillips, and Josh Butler. As we talk about top order, we've got three top order batters out there. Glenn Phillips can also bat at number 4, so I'll just put him at top order, middle order. But three wicket keeping choices: Liam Livingston, Marcus Stoinis, Moeen Ali, and Mitch Santon as your all-rounders. Mark Wood, Trent Bolt, Tim Southey, and Chris
I think
Wokes.
there is some display error. Marcus Twain is not playing tomorrow.
Is it?
Marcus Stoinis is from
I mean, it's
Australia.
Oh,
England
sorry,
versus New
Marcus is
Zealand.
Australia. Correct. I'm sorry. What what was that all about? Marcus
I think
Stoinis is
we
made
will.
the
We should have a conversation with our team.
yes. We will. I think you know what. Regardless of that, Marcus Stoinis is really hoping he plays and he really poops England's party.
I
No,
think
no,
So
we can replace him
I
with
think
another
Marcus
player.
Stoinis
Just
might be a
focus
feature.
him up
Marcus
and
Stoinis might be a feature on the boundary ropes, hoping that England is the team to lose tomorrow.
they will be
yeah.
hoping that it goes in that favor. But let's bring up the captain and vice captaincy choice. Your thoughts, especially Moeen Ali has had a decent World Cup, not the best. But again, in New Zealand, he scored 87 runs at a strike rate of 145. He's picked up a wicket. And Trent Bolt has been the bowler in form. He's picked up wickets up front. How important is he going to be tomorrow, especially Moeen Ali and also talking about Trent Bolt, Jared?
10 Bolt is going to be exceptionally important this year. As I spoke, the top order hasn't really come good this year's World Cup, but the sides of the teams, the roles that have really come good as the fast bowlers are opening the innings on across all the teams. I think even the associate nations have done well in terms of power play bowling. So that's where Trent Bolt is so important for you. If you get Josh Butler out as quickly as possible, this England team really seems to struggle to get going early on in the innings. And I think also if you look at their batting order, right? I mean, if you look at England's batting records, most of them have struggled, and they'll be hoping, that Trent Bolt continues to make sure that the team struggle. And against swing and pace, I think English batters have struggled. We've seen that in Test matches for quite often, where some of these players who play in Test matches have struggled as well when the ball starts swinging. And obviously, in this year's World Cup, even the associate nations have troubled them. So tomorrow, England's going to be up against quite a bit, and that's where teams, Trent Bolt and Tim Southey, the two of them really are important, because when the ball starts to move around, these two are probably the most lethal combination in white ball cricket. Moeen Ali, on the other hand, I think is equally important because, as I already mentioned, He has the best strike rate, and he's the second highest run getter in the tournament. I think he's also not out, if I'm not wrong. He's not been
Yeah,
dismissed yet this year.
he's gotten a couple of opportunities to bat, and he's batted really well. He took
Yeah,
the
I think
heat.
he hasn't been dismissed yet, if I'm not wrong. In this year's World Cup,
Yeah,
I'll
he
have
took
to fact check that.
the.
I'll have to
I'm
fact
not
check it,
sure
but
if he got dismissed against Afghanistan. I'm not sure of that. But against
no, no, because
Ireland, he got out.
Against Afghanistan, I think he was not out. It was him
Yeah,
and
he was not out. He was not
it
out
was
in
him
both
and
the
Liam
games.
Livingston who carried their bat and won the game for them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
True, true. Against Ireland,
yesterday's
again,
match,
again, he was not
it
out.
started to rain when he was batting. So
Yeah.
he has an average of 32, and I think that's the reason why he is probably not an average exactly, because when you're not dismissed, you don't have an average as such. But
I
he scored
also
Yeah.
13
think that
runs, not out,
Moeen Ali
at a
and
very good
Liam
strike rate.
Livingston.
But
Yeah, I also think
Moeen Ali will only come good when you give him a platform to launch. He isn't a player who's going to play 30, 40. I mean, not 30, 40, but at least not going to play half the innings. But the way England
no,
have
but I think
played,
he
their
is a
batting is
more
played.
balanced player than Liam Livingston is. I mean, Liam Livingston is a spectacular player, but if somebody needs a platform to launch, I think Liam Livingston needs a platform to launch more than Moeen Ali, because we have
Yeah,
seen
I think
earlier in
both
his
of them
career Moeen Ali.
combined. But I mean, my point being here, Sandhimani, is that you don't expect Moeen Ali or Liam Livingston. If Moeen Ali plays
No, but
30 to
Moeen Ali
40
used to
balls,
come in at number
I mean,
3 for England at some point. He used to open the innings for England at some point.
fair
So
enough,
he
fair enough.
is
But
good.
if
He
you
is
look at
playing.
the way he plays cricket now, if you look at the role that he's had in CSK, if you look at the role that he's had in England, he's been the dasher. He hasn't been the kind of batter who initially came on to bat. Moeen Ali was a top order bat
You
No,
also
initially.
but he bats at
remember,
number 3 for CSK as well.
Yeah, and that's where he's rediscovered
regardless of
himself.
this
That's how he
dasher
came back
role
to
or
the
not,
England team.
Moeen Ali's consistency has hit a peak over the last couple
Yeah.
of years, which is really benefits for England and for CSK wherever he plays across the world.
But
Moeen
I
Ali
also think if they're going to play, if Liam Livingston and Moeen Ali is going to play an important role tomorrow, they'll have to drop Adil Rashid and get Chris Jordan back in the team.
Yeah, I think it's
interesting
time.
interesting call there.
I'll be honest. I wanted Adil Rashid to get some time in, but he's had a very bad record in
See,
England previously.
if you
We had it.
talk
We
about
have
Moeen
this
Ali
year as well. But
also,
I
he
think
can be
what is
used as a
happening is,
decent spinner.
yeah, yeah.
With the
Go ahead.
likes of Devon Conway up there, you can use him there because there are a couple of three left-handers in top seven. Moeen Ali is
Yeah.
not a bad option. He really gives the ball the rep.
Also,
And also
Adil
remember,
Rashid is the kind of spinner who's going to toss the ball up, or not toss the ball up as much, but he isn't very good when he has to ball quicker through the air. He
but you know
loves
what,
to,
Jaren,
yeah.
there were two kinds of Brisbane wickets we saw. Today you saw much more quicker wicket in Brisbane, but in the game the game with Zimbabwe and Bangladesh played, the ball was sticking around quite a bit. It was a dry Brisbane
Yeah,
wicket,
correct.
which I've never seen in my entire life. I've never seen a Brisbane wicket so dry where the spinners were in action, the ball was turning, the slower balls were
But
holding
but
up like it was
I
being
mean,
played
in
on
the Zimbabwe versus
Chittagong.
Bangladesh game, the spinners were still trying to dart the balls in. So
See,
I
the
still
ones who
feel
tried to toss the ball got the benefits out of it. And remember, Mustafizu's balls were sticking on the wicket. I've never seen a Brisbane wicket never like that. Brisbane wicket never sticks unless it's day 5 of a test match. Even on day 5 of the test match comes very true. You saw that in that Gabba test match which India played. So it was very surprising for me to see. I don't know if it was because if it's a day game. A lot of factors do come into account there as well. But tomorrow it's an evening game, which means I'm expecting a different wicket, at least a wicket like what we saw today. But if it's going to be on the same surface what we played today, and there might have been already 40 overs played. So not a bad option to go in with Adil Rashid because New Zealand have a tendency to struggle against leggies. So not a bad option at all, right?
I
definitely.
mean, having said that, I think Adil Rashid hasn't. I mean, you would
No,
argue that
but
against
I
Ireland,
still I
Adil
yeah
Rashid
I
looked
think
better. But Ireland isn't it? Ireland is a team which really has struggled against spin in this tournament itself. Hasaranga and Tikshana took them to the cleaners when they were bowling, and they haven't looked good against. And maybe if Afghanistan match was played, I think you would have seen Afghanistani spinners do the same. But against New Zealand, I think I really don't think it affects New Zealand as much, because where New Zealand struggle against spinners is to get going. And I agree that New Zealand batters don't have a very good strike rate against leg spinners. I mean spinners in general, but they don't seem to lose their wickets quite a bit. And I think that is where Adil Rashid is important. Adil Rashid is your wicket-taking bowler. He isn't the kind of bowler who's going to stop, or I mean, who's going to not restrict runs. And Adil Rashid right now has been not only giving away runs, he's also been guilty of giving not getting wickets in those middle overs. That's
yeah.
where I feel Chris Jordan is a better option, because he can bat a bit. And also the fact that in the middle overs you can use him as an enforcer. And on these pitches where he balls the heavy ball, I think New Zealand have had their struggle against that heavy ball as well.
Absolutely. Truly. Having said that, I think that will be the end of today's live. I think we've had enough discussion on both the games. And I hope we were able to cover the games in depth as well. Because tomorrow there's another game, Sri Lanka was Afghanistan as well. But I think that game is going to be a lot more inconsequential when you come talk about New Zealand versus England and the context it has
I mean,
got, how
it's
important
not
it is for
going
England.
just going to be inconsequential. It is absolutely inconsequential. Both the teams, if they win all the games, they are not going to make it to the semifinals. So
And
might
net
as
run
well.
rate,
Yeah.
net run
No,
rate
no,
is a
no.
big
There is no
factor.
chance any of the teams are going to make it to the
I think
semifinals.
with tomorrow, it's going to be a spinners versus spinner competition. It's pretty much it. So
You
we
hope
are
it is.
Yeah,
we
and
Actually,
would
I
I
hope
love
think
for this
Afghanistan
there's
to
gets
going
to
to
play
be
again.
a platform for Sri Lanka to take their revenge from the Asia Cup
Or
against
maybe
Afghanistan.
you never know. Afghanistan will be really kicking themselves. They never got to play games other than the game against England, where I
Yeah.
thought they fought well. It'll be such a sad story if it's a game. It's a washout tomorrow as well. They'll be just
I mean, I
I
blaming the
hope
mean,
it's not a
result.
either
washout
way, it is
tomorrow
very
because
inconsequential. I don't.
if tomorrow is a washout, I mean, in the morning, if it's a washout, I think it's going to affect the game in the evening as well. That's where maybe, and ICC's already had a double whammy before where we had the whole day, previous Friday, where we had the whole day in Melbourne get washed off. Tomorrow,
But then
if this
Australia will be
happens, I think
celebrating.
English fans will be
If it
really,
is a
really
washout
annoyed.
tomorrow, Australia will be celebrating.
Yeah, I mean, Rain has been supporting Australia for quite a bit time, quite a long time. So I
Australia will
mean,
try to tell the
the
government
Barmy
no
armies, I
celebrating
think
tomorrow.
if tomorrow it rains, the Barmy army is going to file a petition to make sure that there's a roof on every stadium in England at least.
Yeah.
Talking about rain, I think there's a huge rain threat over India Bangladesh game as well, which Indian fans won't be liking it. You're going to lose 3 points in the matter of 2 games. If that happens, that's going to really hamper India's chances in a big way. You never know what's going to happen next. That's something which Indian fans will be really hoping doesn't happen. India gets some game at least. Let's hope that rain stays away. It's been an awful time in Australia out there when it comes to weather conditions. A lot of games washed out already. And I don't know what's going to happen when it comes to the end of the World Cup, because you're going to have games in Adelaide, Melbourne, the finals, semi-finals. If those games are going to be rain affected, God save this World Cup. So that's what I'll end this live with. Thank you for watching us once again on Boomer Live, and do check out our app once again and play the fantasy contest with our app. And remember to play the predictor as well. This is the opportunity to predict games, predict the results, predict certain events of a match, and win a lot of prizes as well. This World Cup, you can win so many prizes for absolutely free of course at Boom 11. You'll be having me, Jaren, and Sandeepani joining throughout this World Cup. And remember, it's only going to get exciting from here. The final leg of the World Cup is here. Who are going to be the 4 teams? Who's going to be crowned the champions? Is it going to be a new champion? Is it going to be a champion who's going to win it after a long time? A lot of questions. Let's see what happens. Good night, all of you.
Good night,
Good night,
guys.
guys.